Your job is not to pass down that generational trauma. Your job is not to cause it in the first place. What we as parents chiseled into them as a child, they now read back to themselves as their inner truth as an adult. That is their paradigm. Hello and welcome back to Talking Teens Official. I'm Nural and thank you for joining me and for your listening ears. This episode is episode 22. I really appreciate you coming back to have a watch and a little bit of a listen. We're still playing around with our setup here, so each one is just going to keep on getting better. Last episode, we started a deep dive into our parents' inner compass. We talked about triggers and how they're often a ghost of your past. Old, unhealed wounds that our kids accidentally poke. Today we're going to hunt down those ghosts and we're talking about the limiting beliefs we inherited from our own upbringing and how, without even realizing it, we might be passing those down to our own kids. They sound familiar, so I'm just going to run through a couple of them that you might have heard. These old, seemingly harmless phrases that our parents or grandparents used to say to us. Money doesn't grow on trees. You can't always get what you want. And the classic, children should be seen and not heard. We say them on autopilot, but without realizing these phrases are actually setting up our kids for limiting beliefs and failure. And this is what we're delving into in this episode. When a child hears money doesn't grow on trees over and over and over again, what they're really learning is a mindset of lack, not abundance. When they hear you can't always get what you want, they're really learning that life is hard and that they're not in control of their own choices or their own lifestyle. We are, in effect, putting them in a box and telling them to fit the mold, the norm. Don't think outside of it. Everyone's doing this. This is what happens, and therefore you should too. And when you tell a child they should be seen and not heard, you are explicitly teaching them that they can't speak up about anything. And that one really grinds my goat. And we really need to be honest here. The last one, children should be seen and not heard, in particular, can be incredibly damaging. It has historically been used in a very sexist and misogynistic way, aimed squarely at teaching young girls that their voices, their opinions, and their ideas simply don't matter. So in this episode, we're going to unpack those ghosts. We are going to look at where they came from and find a new set of tools to help our kids write a different, more empowering script. So how do we as parents break this cycle? Well, here's a tool you can actually use. It starts with self-reflection. The first step is to just stop and consciously think and remember how hearing those phrases made you feel when you were younger. When your parents said, money doesn't grow on trees, did it make you feel ambitious? Or did it make you feel ashamed for asking for something? When you were told to be seen and not heard, did it make you feel respected? Or did it make you feel small and unimportant? Then have a think about the opportunities you did not take or you were too scared to take as an adult because of those old ghosts. How many times did you avoid a risk because of that old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush? Again, awareness is key here. You need to be aware of what you are saying because that is exactly what your children are hearing. And if you're not careful, you are making them feel exactly the same way you felt as when you were a child. Your job is not to pass down that generational trauma. if I'm going to call it that loosely, just because you turned out okay. Your job is not to cause it in the first place and to help everyone heal and be the best that they can. So we've talked about these ghosts and these limiting beliefs, but to truly break the cycle, you need to understand what they are and how they got there. And again, here's another tool you can actually use. I want you to picture your child's mind or your kid's mind as a soft stone tablet. When they're young, the stone is blank and impressionable. And every time we as parents, and I'm guilty of them too, say one of those phrases, money doesn't grow on trees, children should be seen and not heard, stop being so sensitive, we are acting as the chisel. With every repetition and with every bit of emotion behind it, we are chiseling those ideas into their stone tablet. They aren't just memories. They become deep, permanent grooves on that tablet, on their mind. In the world of mindset, this is what is known as a paradigm or an invisible script. It's a multitude of habits and fixed ideas that are stored in our subconscious mind, the part of our minds that runs on autopilot. And here's the important part. As our kids grow up, they start to run their lives based on that chiseling. Their internal dialogue is just their finger tracing those old grooves. They won't take a risk because the groove for a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush is far too deep. They won't speak up in a meeting because the groove for be seen and not heard is telling them to stay quiet and mind your own business. What we as parents chiseled into them as a child, they now read back to themselves as their inner truth as an adult. That is their paradigm. So how do we actually find these ghosts, these old paradigms? Where do you even begin to look for a belief that is invisible, that I'm calling invisible for you? It's actually a little bit simpler than you think. You don't need to dig. You just need to listen and reflect. In my book, I talk about a quote from Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is our goal here. Here are 3 tools you can actually use to make your unconscious limiting beliefs conscious. You need to recognize them. The first tool, I'm going to call it the Autopilot Audit. First thing you need to do is just listen for 1 week. Your only job is to be an observer of your own autopilot language, the things you say without even thinking, or the things that you're thinking without even realizing you're thinking them. So I need you to think about your thinking a bit. The phrases that come out of your mouth without you even thinking. Listen for those ghosts we talked about. They could be just old sayings, or it could be just a way that you do something without even giving it a second thought as where it originated from. When you hear yourself say or do these things, you've actually caught one and you've just heard that old ghost speak. The second thing I want you to do, and this one is a little bit more proactive, and I'm going to call it the belief inventory. I want you to find a quiet 15 minutes to yourself, just you, a pen, and a piece of paper. And I want you to do a belief inventory. Write down these headings. I want you to write down money, success, family, and emotions. And just write. Write down the first truths that come to your mind or what you believe for each one. I don't want you to judge it. I just want to know what those words mean to you. Just get it down on the bit of paper. 15 minutes, quiet time, headings, money, success, family, emotions, and just write. It can be dot points, it can be sentences. I don't care. You need to be aware of what you're actually thinking in that quiet space. The third tool I want you to do is I want you to follow the feeling, which means I want you to find the root of those beliefs that you've got there. So you have a list of phrases or words and beliefs and ideas you have behind them because you took that time, that 15 minutes to write down your thoughts. The final tool I want you to use is to actually find out where they came from. I want you to connect the beliefs to a feeling. And when you think money is hard to earn, or even under that money heading, if you had hard to earn, I want you to try and have a little bit of a deep dive into what is the feeling under it. Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it injustice? That specific reoccurring feeling is actually the breadcrumb trail. So you need to sit down and have a think about the feelings under those beliefs. And it's not woo-woo. I need you to trust me on this one. And then I want you to ask yourself one powerful question. When was the first time that I remember feeling this way? That memory is the ghost, and you've just gone down and found the root. So you've identified your ghost, hopefully. You hear yourself about to say, money doesn't grow on trees. And if you remember from last episode, you've used your 7-second pause. So now what? What do I do with that information? Where do you go with that? So what I need you to do, and this is something that can take a little bit of practice, I need you to replace that old dead-end script. Instead of reacting with the old phrase, I need you to pause. And this is your opportunity to actually connect with your own child. I would always recommend maybe even just telling a story or a memory from your own childhood and how that phrase made you feel. You can say something like, when you ask me for that, it makes me remember when I was a kid and I was asking for that. When I was your age, I remember asking for something I really wanted and I was told money doesn't grow on trees. And it made me feel a little bit small, a little bit ashamed for even asking. And I just want to add a little notes here on that line, when I was your age. We all know this phrase can turn into a bit of a joke, which is actually great. It's a great conversation softener and great conversation starter. But sometimes our kids, our teenagers in particular, will miss the delicacies of a serious conversation that starts that way. This is where you as a parent know your kids best. You need to read the room. If you tell your story and they're not quite getting the point, you might need to be a little bit more explicit, but still gentle. You can follow it up with, the reason I'm telling you this is that I don't want you to feel the way that I did. That's it. Because it made me feel a bit horrible. Do what you think will work. And if this approach doesn't land, that's okay. Try something else. The goal of this podcast is not to achieve perfection instantly. It is to remain human and empower you to treat your kids as human too. So we've learned how to stop the ghosts in the moment, but the final step is the long-term work. How to proactively build new, empowering beliefs in our kids. How do we become the conscious sculptor, not just the unconscious chisel? Remember, a paradigm is just literally a fixed idea in the subconscious mind. And the reason why it got there is through the repetition and the emotion that was felt there. We can use the exact same process to actually build better ones. And I'll tell you how. If the old ghost says money doesn't grow on trees, the new chisel, the new lines that you can actually say to your kids is start having creative conversations about money. You can ask your kids, hypothetically, if we had an extra $1,000 this month, what's a creative way or a fun way we could use it to do something for ourselves or even help someone? You are building a new paradigm of abundance and possibility with that one. You've just opened up the world of a seemingly small amount of money for $1,000, but what are you going to do with it? There you go. If the old ghost says children should be seen and not heard, the new chisel that you could be saying to them is to actively ask for and actually respect their opinion on real family matters. And you could try it at the dinner table. And it doesn't have to be a full-on serious conversation. You could say to them, so we were thinking about going on a holiday. What are your thoughts? Where would you like to go? And you could even pose the question, if money was no option, where would we go? And when you genuinely listen, you are chiseling in a new belief. My voice has value, but not only that, you're actually interested in their thoughts and their thinking and what they're going to say. Whether or not money is an issue doesn't really matter. The point is you're giving them that hypothetical world of possibilities which can one day turn into reality for them. Well, I'll do one more. If the old ghost says you can't always get what you want, the new chisel is actually to shift your praise from their results to their effort and their choices. When they face a setback, you can say to them, okay, that didn't work. You didn't make the team. You didn't do as well on that test that you thought you would. What's our next move? What are we going to do now? What part of this can you actually control and take the reins on? You are relentlessly chiseling in a new paradigm with that one. You are saying to them, you are in control of your own choices and your own path. So take control of it. This one is a little bit more hard hitting. So this whole episode, so we've done a little bit of work on ourselves as parents. We've found our ghosts. We've been talking about these limiting beliefs and where they've come from. And I've given you a little bit of homework to do, if you like. And we're learning to write new scripts. But what about the beliefs that are already in our kids? What about the chiseling that's already been done? And I will say this whole hand on my heart as loud as I can I'll sing it from the rooftops. I see it all the time in the classroom. So the final most important step that teachers need parents to do, we would like parents to do, is to give your kid and your teen the actual chisel. So you're not taking control of their limiting beliefs. We need to get them to do it. So I'm going to give you an example because I did say I see this a lot. So I'm going to give you an example of where I've seen it. I remember having a class after one of Melbourne's long lockdowns during the COVID period. When we came back in between, I don't know which lockdown it was, it's a part of schooling that I don't want to remember. The kids were so deflated. The spark was gone. They would walk into the room and just slump and just sit down. Part of them were happy to be there, but part of them were like, oh, what's the point, miss? So I actually asked this one class in particular. I actually asked them to close their eyes and remember what they used to dream of being when they grew up, when they were little. Then I wanted them to reflect as to whether or not that has changed and the reason why. And here you go. Here's some of their answers. So I had a kid who wanted to be a fireman. And the answers were just heartbreaking. One student said, my parents told me it was silly. Another kid said, wrote down on a piece of paper and handed it to me, I don't think I'm smart enough. So by having these limiting beliefs, I'm actually just passing a judgment on a kid's dreams, if you like. They're already setting in, and that's what we're finding within the schools. So what you need to do, here's another tool you can actually use. I want you to help your kid find the root of their belief. So when your kid comes to you and says, I'm just bad at maths, instead of arguing, you can ask a curious question. And my favorite one, as you know, is according to who. But I'm going to give you another one. So when your kid comes and says, I can't do this, I want you to ask them, besides according to who, I want you to ask them, when did you decide that was true? That's another powerful one. When did you decide that was true? You're not just correcting them. You're helping them see their belief isn't a fact. It's an idea that they've learned and they've taken on board. So when you ask that question, when did you decide that was true? You're helping them find the ghost. And once they see it, you can empower them to write a new script. This is the ultimate goal. We teach our kids how to become the conscious, powerful sculptors of their own lives. And again, this is pretty deep. So if you need some assistance with this, I'm going to ask you to jump into my school community, Talking Teens Official. Just Google it, you'll find it. Because we're doing some work in there at the moment with some of the parents that are already in there, and they're just having mind-blowing moments there. So I'm just going to bring this all together and just going to start wrapping up this episode in true teacher style. I will recap what we have covered. We've learned that the first most crucial step is awareness. That was rule number 1. Stopping to consciously think and remember how those old ghosts made us feel as a child. We explored how those inherited beliefs are chiseled onto the stone tablet of our children's subconscious minds, creating their paradigms and their autopilot programs. And we learned that our job isn't to pass down that generational trauma loosely, but to break the cycle. We did this by giving you 3 main tools. The first in-the-moment tool, by telling your kid your own story, your own vulnerable story, if you like. We'll just open up the world of conversation there. That was when I said, when I was a kid, if I asked for that, the answer was money doesn't grow on trees, and it made me feel pretty bad. So by doing that, you're turning conflict into connection. The second long-term proactive tool was becoming a conscious sculptor, using a new empowering language to build a better blueprint for your child. And finally, the most important tool that I really want you to do is to give your kid the chisel. By helping them find the roots of their own limiting beliefs and empowering them to sculpt their own future. And remember that question. When did you decide that was true? That's on the back of according to who. It's not about being perfect, and I'm not here to say you need to be perfect. You have to do all this and it will happen overnight, because it won't. I'll be completely honest. These things take time, but you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So you need to acknowledge these steps. It's about being aware to stop passing down our old ghosts and giving our kids the tools to actually break their own and then chisel in a new line into their stone tablet. The whole conversation about chiseling the stone tablet does make me think of Sir Ken Robinson's core message, and he often used the metaphor of education as an organic process, like being a gardener. He said you can't make a plant grow by pulling on its leaves, by giving it a bit of a yank. Your job is to create the right conditions for it to flourish. So you need the soil, you need the sunlight, you need the water, and you just need a little bit of attention. But these ghosts of our upbringing and these limiting beliefs are actually the tools of a factory, not a garden. When we pass them down, we're acting like factory foremen, trying to stamp a standard, uniform model onto our kids. And the consequence of this is that we can stop our kids from forever finding their element, the sweet spot where their natural talents and personal passions meet. When we tell a kid that's not a realistic dream, you better have a backup plan, kid, we are actively chiseling a wall between them and their passions by saying to them, you better have a backup plan. Breaking this cycle isn't just about making our kids feel better. It's about stopping ourselves from being factory foremen and becoming gardeners. so we can give our kids the freedom and the permission to find their true element. Next time on Talking Teens, we're tackling the most common communication gap in every household. You ask your kid and your teenager what's wrong, and they hit you up with nothing. Or, I'm fine, don't worry about it. But their entire body is screaming that they're not fine. That eye roll, that shrug, that slammed door, that is the real conversation. I want you to join me next week as we learn how to decode the unspoken conversation. We'll explore how to read their body language and, most importantly, how to listen to what our kids are really telling us, especially when they're not saying a word. If you enjoyed this episode and want to continue the conversation, please follow and subscribe on all social media channels. I'm on Threads, I'm on Insta, and on School as well. And if you find real value in what we're doing here, please consider buying me a coffee. I'll put a QR code in the comments and show notes, and you can donate any amount you choose. And every little bit helps fuel my late night coffee supply while I'm editing these episodes for you. And don't forget to join my school community. We are having some really great conversations in there, and I would love for you to come in and just take a look around. Until then, remember that focus, connection over correction. Thank you for listening. I'm Nural, and this is Talking Teens Official.